Welcome back, all you chemrats and hive mice, to the neon red drenched sound waves of Vox Free Innsmouth.
Is that neon? Maybe a splash of blood?
Or is it Freon?
Oh, a little Freon, yeah. This tastes so sweet.
I think that coolant's leaking again.
In other news, the Corridor 54 killer has struck again, leaving 4 more headless and skinless bodies in the cracked Elysium. It seems like the last few weeks may have been a little rest for the wicked.
With the machine spirits also rebelling all over the Underhive, and the air recyclers have started to pump out freezing winds and snow flurries. You know how much we love those blizzards in the hab blocks.
Don't eat the snow. Don't eat the snow. No matter the color.
I don't know. I saw quite a few snow cone cards gathering up around those vents to start selling some of their wares to those brave enough.
Yeah, you see all the bodies laying next to that cart too?
Don't mind the bodies. I was told it's perfectly safe.
Is that a Geiger counter going off, or are you just happy to eat your snow cone?
Tastes good till it's not.
We are waiting out the freeze and drinking the coldest fungi beer in the hive down here at Joe's Sump Shack.
Home of Joe's Carcosian Lemon Gumbo. Watch out for those genetically modified lemons. They're a little spicy. We're out here giving this place 2 toilets this time, just because those lemons just come a little too spicy. A little too spicy.
A little sour too.
Yeah, a little spicy.
You don't like the spicy lemon? Come on, man.
You know, when you think lemon, you don't think spicy, but it just singes the back of your throat.
It's not the first time.
All the hair on the back of my tongue is gone, guys. I don't know.
This burnt tongue hair smell. It's real hard to get rid of.
The burnt tongue hair smell? Oh my god.
Little lingua. Little lingua. Little lingua.
When you order from Joe's Sump Shack, you gotta roll your R's a little hard, don't you? We will be your guides tonight through the twisting, turning grab tracks of the Underhive, 665.66 UHMR Chemrat Radio. As always, I am your friendly Hab Block Goblin King, joined today by my rocket hammer wielding co-host Marky.
What it is, hoes.
And toting the shovel of close range injustice, we are joined by Kev. Kev, tell us, how many hits does it take to get to the center of a guardsman?
Well, it depends on where you hit him.
You get him right in the sack, maybe one.
Maybe one.
If you got the preferred method is overhead swing, aiming for somewhere about the collarbone. And if you swing hard enough, swinging for home, Johnny, as they say.
Yes, or croquet mallet his nuts right into the next ring.
Well, it is farther
Just
from
crack
the underhanded swing.
Yes.
You don't gain the benefit of gravity.
Yes.
Whereas the overhanded swing allows you to bring it down, as they would say.
But you do gain the benefit of fatality, Mortal Kombat style, smashing his nuts into his throat.
Right, but that you could also do that with a boot follow-up after the clavicle strike.
Yeah. So
it's just very interesting. It's just very interesting that you're both describing techniques that we can use to open up the sump crabs here at Joe's. I'm just pointing that out.
You just gotta wear the bib.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah. But yeah, definitely the overhead against the clavicle,
Yes.
aim for the heart,
Yes.
straight to
There
the
you
center of the guardsman.
Good
A 1,
stuff.
That's
a 2, a 3.
what's the fastest
3
way
licks
to
to get to the center of a guardsman.
Just a Slanish demon licking a guardsman twice and then eating him.
Dude, that picture will never leave my mind.
Distending jaw.
We need to find somebody to animate this for us. It would just be a demonette,
Yeah.
and it would be another demonette asking how many licks does it take to get to the center, and it would be the one takes off one arm, the other one takes off the other arm, and then while she's doing it, she's 1, a 2,
And 2.
and then the third one right through the middle, and just pick him
There
up.
you go.
A 3.
It's got the heart on the end of the arm, on the end of the
Right
arm.
on the end of the claw. Kali Maud
yeah.
out the back of him.
Guardsman's like, what the fuck?
Kali Ma out the back of him.
Well, yeah, like a shish kebab, but like
Yeah.
the guardsman's down here, but his heart's
All the
on
way
the end
through.
of it.
Guards kebab.
Way to
Like
do
could
it.
have been 1, but
Yeah.
intentionally done in 3.
Yeah. You gotta savor it.
Yeah. See how many pre-millennials get that joke because that's
Oh,
an
boy.
old
Right.
commercial.
This
Be careful
week
now.
we are back for a hobby episode. We haven't done a Hobbisode in a while, and
We're
we are
back
going
on
to
our
talk
shit.
about hobby life balance, which is always something difficult to do. And I think we all kind of suffer from it. You know, you've got how much time do you want to dedicate to your hobby? How much time do you want to dedicate? How little time can you dedicate to your hobby because of fucking life, bills, the world, how it all works,
Children,
and what it means
pets.
what it means to dedicate time to your hobby. Because hobbies are, whether or not this is your hobby, whether or not you're listening to us for the first time and you have no idea what the fuck Warhammer 40K is, if you have a hobby, a lot of the reasons that we engage in hobbies is because we're trying to like disconnect, we're trying to unwind, we're trying to embrace something zen like in our centers so we can refocus for the tasks at hand.
Yeah, this is going to be a really short episode. Basically, if
No,
you
I'm
have-
not here because he's doing it wrong.
yeah, if you have a hobby, just accept the fact you'll never have time for it. Thank you for
Yeah.
joining us today. Follow us on.
Have a great day.
Yeah, we got old. Now we have money for hobbies, but no time.
Yeah, it's what is it? The triangle. It's
such
like
a weird
sleep,
thing, right?
sleep, time, money.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yep.
Circle
and none
two.
of us have any of all three.
yeah. You only pick two.
In this economy, sleep in this economy, I'm just
Yeah, it's not
you
happening.
thought I was going to go with money. I'm going with sleep.
I was gonna go with any of those in this economy.
Now in this economy, you only pick one.
I don't even get to pick that shit.
No. In this economy, you circle
Gas.
the middle of the triangle as small as possible because that's
Yeah,
how close
that's
you're
exactly.
getting everything.
Yep.
Obviously, as we're joking around, we all kind of struggle with how to balance hobby along with life commitments and, you know, the stuff, relationships, and all that. And a lot of why we're together as a podcast, a lot of why we came together originally and started talking about everything is because of a shared hobby. So it's obviously very important to all of us. And how
schedule.
do
It actually, that was
Yeah.
part of it too. And that's relevant
Oh yeah.
because it's like you can only do hobby stuff with people with the same schedule as you.
Right.
So you have to.
Yeah,
find-
it's difficult. It's difficult to do. It's difficult to have somebody in your gaming group who is not working like a 9. As odd as it sounds, when you're not working 9 to 5, it's very difficult to do some stuff with people who work 9 to 5. When you are working 9 to 5, it's really difficult to do stuff with people that aren't working 9 to 5.
That's
Yeah.
one of the reasons
When
I
I
got
was-
out of food service is I was tired of not
Yeah.
having the same schedule as everybody else.
Everybody
Yeah.
else. Yeah.
Yeah.
When I was in college and I was running my own business and I was keeping my own hours, we had a lot of food service people. There was a lot there. There were a couple of food service people and a couple of 9 to 5ers in our D&D group. And this food service people, the people that didn't work 9 to 5 in food service or retail, depending on what it was,
Yeah.
the people with the
those are the
non-set
people who
schedules,
don't.
they could drop everything, seemingly
show up.
drop everything,
Yeah.
and play a D&D game starting at like fucking 10 o'clock at night on a Tuesday and play until like 4 or 5 in the morning and be fine. The guys that
Yeah.
were working 9 to 5 in the tech industry couldn't do it.
Can't do
And
that.
like,
yeah.
I understood, but it really hadn't sank in yet because I'd made my own hours a lot of the time. So if I didn't have class, I was at my sign shop running my own business. And oddly enough, this is my old company logo. It's just one of those things where like I had no real concept until I started working for other people. When I started running somebody else's sign shop, everything changed.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. And you know, whether or not it's D&D, whether or not it's Warhammer 40K, whether or not it's any other hobby you do, video games are definitely a very big hobby for a lot of people. Board game nights, people do lots of board game nights.
Oh,
Magic
yeah.
the Gathering.
There's
all sorts of hobbies you can be involved in.
I have a whole gaggle of people I play video games with, but they're all on East Coast time. So
That's got to be difficult.
Well, it's rough because it means that like I have to get off work and basically immediately get online to play with them. Otherwise, I'm going
Right.
to be halfway through the game. And even then, getting off work, because currently I'm off work at like 6 o'clock is when I clock out. Most of them are already, starting to be done for the evening at that point because it's 9 o'clock their time.
Yeah.
So then by the time
Or like
I get
when-
home, 6:30, get online, 6:45.
Yeah, hopping off.
and they're like, "Oh, cool. Well, I guess we got like we'll play one more round or something like that."
Yeah.
Like I'm just getting warmed up.
Mm-hmm.
It's like recording the podcast. When we finish, it's close to midnight or 11 for me, and for you guys,
then,
it's
like
9.
for last week's recording. Yeah, it was like 11 o'clock for you, and then I drove home, and then I got home, and it was 11:55 when I pulled into my garage, and then it was 11:57, I think, when I walked in my front door, and I was like, home by midnight. That was a record for us. That's
because when we used to all record in San Diego, it was record and then we would game. So we would be up until like 4 a.m.
Right. And that
mostly
was cool.
because we had to talk in Mark's driveway for an hour.
Oh yeah, we got a post game decompression.
Yeah, pillow talk.
Right.
Yeah, pillow talk. Now we just pre-pillow talk.
The pre-pillow. That's right. For all you patrons out there, you get some pre-pillow talk.
Well, sometimes before we all gaggle around, Mark and I will talk bullshit before.
How do you balance stuff? Mark, give us an example of how you balance hobby and life. What are some tricks or tips you've got?
Yeah,
he constructed this man cave and then exiled the rest of the family to everywhere else.
That was part of it.
Problem solved.
Part of it, yeah.
What are you doing in my swamp?
Get out! Yeah, so just to give everybody a grasp, if you don't already know me or what bullshit? What I have. I was gonna say what I have. My wife is a possession. I'm married.
That's just the idea. Right? I'm bought them.
I'm married.
They're bought and paid for at this point. That's the point.
Mark and Kevin, I think you guys may have gone through okay.
So I'm married to a lady, and she don't work, so her free time once I get home is her time. And I'm sure a lot of people have very similar things where it's like, if your significant other doesn't work, they're obviously not beat to shit by the end of the day. They got plenty of energy, and they're like, hey, what do you want to do? And I'm like, I don't want to do shit.
Like, I want to sit down and fucking watch TV and then zone out.
Yeah, I mean, there's days where I just sit there and I'm just staring at the wall because I'm just so fried.
I hate those days.
Yeah, those are brutal, right?
I like those are the days that make you want to leave your job.
Yeah.
You're like, man, I can't even go unload my workday because I'm too tired to do what I do to unload.
Yeah, and I mean, everyone's different, right? So like when I never like talking about work. I talk about how shitty it is, but I don't talk about it,
Yeah.
I'd be like, work sucked today. I'm spent.
What's his face didn't fucking do his job.
No, I mean, I don't even know if I go that far, but anyways, the wife, I got 2 kids. If you got littler ones, they obviously need a little more attention. As they get older, they get a little more self-sufficient. And I got a cat, which I don't give it's not. I was gonna say I don't give a shit about. I'm not saying that, but it's my daughter's cat.
You have a predator that just happens to live in your house.
I don't know what happened to him lately, man. He's been for the past week and a half. He's been hanging out inside. He hasn't gone outside at all.
He probably got his ass.
He hasn't murdered
That's
anything
what I'm thinking.
in a week and a half.
Either that, or I've seen a lot of hawks recently.
Yeah,
and maybe he was like
he got hemmed up. Yeah,
that's a big bird.
That's what I'm thinking. That he got hemmed up by like one of the eagles or hawks out here.
Yeah,
so he's like, all right, I'm gonna chill out inside for a little bit.
Yeah, he probably got trapped under a car, and the bird probably was coming at him. He's like, oh fuck.
Yeah, exactly.
So with all that pressure and all those different tasks, like how do you find time? Do you structure time? Do you
so personally,
do you look for
I've gone through a lot of different methods. Sometimes you gorge yourself in the hobby. And you pretty much ignore everyone and everything, and you just sit down and you hobby for as much as you can.
The opposite of balance. Got it.
Yeah, exactly. And that was definitely more like when I first, I guess when I first started getting back into the hobby, that was definitely how I was going about it.
Yeah.
I would just disappear for like 6-7 hours, maybe 4 days out of the week, and just be hobbying, putting shit together, building, painting. And that obviously didn't go over well with the wife, I guess. So, definitely talks have happened. And it kind of turned into I'll hang out with the family after work, and then come around like 8 o'clock. Everybody's kind of getting ready for bed. And I would sacrifice, 1 to 4 hours at 8 o'clock of hobby time, and then go to work the next day, and then kind of rinse, repeat on the days that I can handle it. So it's kind of like back to that little triangle that I mentioned, where it was like, sleep. What is it? Sleep, work, money, I guess, or some shit like that.
Work, hobby.
Yeah. So sacrifice a little bit of sleep, get a little more hobby done. And that's kind of where it stayed. There's just, now it's not as abundant nowadays. Now it's like whenever I feel like it, I'll sacrifice an afternoon or an evening of hanging out with the family to hobby instead. But usually it's like, okay, I'll just wait for when I feel like I get the hobby bug bite, where it's like, yeah, I feel like hobbying. I'm just going to,
That's me.
Yeah.
Like once I hit over 2,000 points, it started to be like, okay, now I don't have like the immediate drive to need to build things.
Right.
And it's more like, okay, I have time to paint and I'm in the mood to paint.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, it's mainly about how you're feeling, right? So if you don't feel like hobbying, I'm not saying force yourself to hobby, but I mean, the thing that I think people fail to understand or don't realize, especially if they're newer to the hobby, is that these models, I was going to say these paints, but the paints don't last forever. But these models are essentially going to last forever, right? Unless your fucking house burns down, forbid, hopefully that doesn't happen.
Right.
But these I've had models since I was like, 13. I've had these, and there's models older than my daughter. You're going to have them for a long, long time. And the hobby's not going anywhere. It's most likely always going to be around. And if it's not,
it's survived for the last 35 years. It's not going to go away before the next release.
Yeah, I don't think it's going away. And it's at its highest points around this time. Maybe if you listen to the pod 3 years down the line and Games Workshop finally went bankrupt and we're all playing 10th edition for the rest of our lives, maybe that's not the case. But
we're still all playing 10th edition for the rest of our lives. So companies will continue to make models. Companies will continue to make paints.
Right.
Regardless of how technology changes and how technology moves forward, there is certain things, because we talk about 3D printing, and I'm sure those of you who listen to us know about 3D, and everybody knows about 3D printing at this point. And a lot of people talk about how 3D printing is going to be the end of the gaming industry. It's going to be the end of the modeling industry and all this stuff. That's an interesting idea, but
it's
spoiler
speculative.
alert. Yeah, well, and spoiler alert.
Objection hearsay.
Unless you have a 4-year education in a very specific type of art, you're not going to be making your own models anytime soon. And I realize that the technology has gotten better and that the training has become easier and that there's, you can go watch YouTube tutorials on how to use Blender and all that stuff. But I went to school for illustration, and a big portion of my schooling was spent in Maya and 3D Studio Max, and which may not be words that people understand anymore, but those were old.
They're still around.
Hollywood level. Okay, they are. I know that they're not as used anymore. But my little sister also went to school for
Blender's the new one.
Blender's the free one, but yeah, my little sister also
use it though.
Yeah, well, because it's free.
Well, yeah,
it's free, and you can watch YouTube tutorials on it. My little sister went to school for illustration and specialized in 3D design and development, and works for a toy company designing 3D toys. She does the 3D modeling, and then somebody prints it with a resin printer, and then it gets turned into a master, and then it gets produced, mass produced. Her ability to use the technology is at a level where I feel like it's a miracle, like it can turn on a computer. And we have a lot of the same basic education. It's the fact is that's what she specialized in. That's what she's really good at. That's what she's focused on. That's where her passion is. She's going to be able to make miniatures, or toys with her eyes closed, as to where somebody like me, who understands how the programs work and who did a bunch of 3D modeling back in the day, I can kind of cobble together something I might like, but I'm not going to turn around and produce something that looks better than a Space Marine. It's not going to happen. Mm-hmm. 1, 2, I don't want to. I want to buy, assemble, and paint. And the same thing goes for the painting side of it. The painting side of the hobby is never going to go away. Even if 3D printing completely replaces model companies, which I highly doubt would ever happen, but even if it were to, the paint side of the hobby is not going anywhere. You're not going to be able to 3D print your own paints. You know? Hey guys, I have a new machine that 3D prints soil. Okay, great. Like, why would you 3D print the base component? Like, paint is pretty much as basic as it gets. So painting's not going away, and painting arguably is a huge part of the hobby.
Well, that, and then combine that with this, I learned that Amazon is actually actively working to sequester 3D printing printers on their website.
Interesting.
Oh, I heard about that. Yeah.
Just the printers. Resin and all that stuff, fair to go. They're basically slowly removing the brands off their platform and forcing them to sell direct from their own manufacturer. But it's under the planning that Amazon is going to then manufacture their own.
Right.
If
That's what Amazon does.
But if Amazon is planning on manufacturing their own 3D printers, I guarantee you they're working on limited use STLs to go with it.
Oh, yeah. You can only print it like 6 times.
You can only print it how many times, whatever it is. You know, you'll buy a 10-pack of forks and you'll be able to print plastic forks, 10 of them, blam, 10 plastic forks, you're good. Things like that. And that will become kind of an industry standard soon after, you guarantee it, because, you know, that's how the businesses work.
So 3D printing is such a weird thing, because 3D printing is the dream of a post-scarcity market. And the biggest example of a post-scarcity market we can talk about is Star Trek. Star Trek has food replicators. So you can just fucking go order whatever you want and it's done.
You can print it. And the reason they have enough like electricity and raw matter or whatever they use. Yeah. They never really go into exactly how it produces whatever it produces, but it essentially combines a bunch of raw stuff and prints whatever you want.
Well, at this point, if you've got the right type of 3D printer and you have the right type of raw material, you can 3D print organs. I mean, we're talking about miniatures, but you can 3D print human organs. You can 3D print food. You can 3D print houses. If a 3D printer exists and you have the right type of raw material, you can print it. And that's a part, you know, that's a post-scarcity idea in a capitalistic world, which is we're at a weird crossroads.
It is a weird
This
place.
is not Freakonomics, and this is not Joe Rogan's podcast, though. So we're going to move away from this topic.
I just that was the thought. As soon as I learned they were going to be manufacturing and selling their own 3D printers exclusively and not allowing other people to be sold on their platform, they're going to be selling STLs. And the only reason they're going to sell STLs is if they can guarantee that you're going to have to buy them a second time.
They're going to make it like their music license, where you can you can buy an album from them and you can pay for like a month, or you can buy it outright and there's a different price
there will be a repeated use one. Kind of like Eve. Back in the day, Eve Online, well, it's still running, but Eve Online has blueprints for item crafting, and there's 2 kinds of blueprints. There's original copy blueprints. So there's original blueprints, and you can print those many times as you want. You can manufacture. There's blueprint copies. So you want to ship, but you don't want to pay an exorbitant amount for the blueprint to craft that ship a whole bunch of times. You can pay for a one-off copy, and then go manufacture it yourself rather than buying it.
Of like $500 in ISP. Or ISK or whatever the fuck.
Yeah, it is.
I used to play Eve.
Yeah. But you remember it was either you buy the ship straight up and you pay whatever the market rate is for the ship, or you buy the either gather or buy the materials, which if you do it smartly is cheaper than paying for the ship outright, and then you buy the blueprint copy, the one-off. You manufacture the ship yourself, and then 3 days later, you have a ship for a fraction of what the market cost was.
And then you hope to God you don't fucking die.
Oh, yeah, and then you hope to God you don't die.
Or your insurance is good. Your insurance is good.
Yeah, insurance for Battleship was the way to go.
So part of what Marky brought up, or part of what you touched on, was communication. So in a relationship, even in a friend group, you have to communicate. You have to communicate your hobby needs, and you have to communicate how you're going to hobby. That's probably an important one, an important tip, I guess, in hobbying. Hobby life
communication
balance
is definitely key, because I know plenty of friends that I have currently that, they're married or they have kids and they're like, yeah, I've been playing too many games this week or been playing too many games this month. The wifey's starting to get a little upset, and I'm like, yep, totally relate, totally know what you're talking about. You gotta talk to him. You gotta talk to your significant other and be like, hey, look, I try to set at least, 1 day a week to paint or hobby and 1 day a week to play, or maybe 2 days a month to play. Expect that out of me. There could be more. And if there's more, I'm going to let you know, but expect at least, 2 games a month and, 1 day to hobby, or 1 evening to hobby a week. That's kind of where I'm at right now. And obviously it'll differ between people. If you don't have kids, maybe, you spend a little less time with your significant other. Maybe your significant other's a little more independent, maybe not. So it all depends.
And that's the other thing and that's part of that communication is figure out where your significant other is. My fiance likes her independent time, so she has no problem with the fact that I run a I run a Deadlands Noir game, I record a podcast, and I hobby. As long as I'm not overboard forsaking personal time, personal relationship time, there isn't a problem. Because she's going to go off and do her own thing too. And then sometimes the thing that we're going to go off and do on our own is something that we enjoy together. Like a couple of weeks ago, we went and saw one of our favorite bands together. And that was something that was our hobby time, in air quotes. And that works out. Your wife plays. So obviously sometimes there's a little bit of crossover hobby time.
Oh yeah.
So
hobby time, game time. The other thing is, maybe you don't have a significant other.
Yeah.
And maybe your problem isn't so much balance, but inspiration or motivation to hobby. And sometimes that's just a what's the word I'm looking for? It's a the words on the tip of my tongue that they instill that shit in you.
Motivation, man.
No. It's not motivation. The
guilt tripping?
No. When you force yourself to do something, the word is on the tip of my tongue.
Drive.
God damn it! It's right there.
Discipline.
Thank you. Yes.
Marky's word corner.
Yes. We're playing word games. Sometimes you just have to have that mental discipline. Just like I say that fortitude, like I have it because it's not like I've been working out or anything. But you just got to have that mental discipline to, hey, maybe I just paint one thing tonight. Maybe I just, paint one color on 10 models tonight and, take 30 minutes out of my day, having that discipline to do that, because it's not so much I need to balance the time that I have to hobby. It's more of like, I got to have that motivation to hobby. And you don't always have that motivation, but sometimes you just got to work your way through it. And I went through that as well. That's back when I was like gorging myself in the hobby and I was painting like every night. I was basically just forcing myself, get this done. That's back when Tom and I were playing every Friday. And we kind of had like an unspoken rule of, if you're going to put it on the table, it needs to be painted. And I was always trying new stuff. Tom was always trying new stuff. So I was constantly putting new models together, painting new models, putting it on the table. Tom would be like, oh, that's new. And I'm like, yeah, now I'm about to rip your ass apart, motherfucker.
I mean, that was back when I first started playing with you guys. I was building and painting shit like every... Yeah, back when I was just starting with you guys, I was painting and building new stuff like every week or two.
Yep.
Every time I get paid, I'd go buy more shit.
Yeah.
And that's definitely that's the second half or the second component of all of this. Kevin, how, being that you moved very recently, and I moved recent-ishly, how have you been balancing your hobby life stuff?
So my balance has been a very careful act of making sure I can still pay my bills, considering that I moved from a very, very cheap local location to a farther away location, and then again out of that location, which was not as cheap as the previous location, but was cheaper than what I'm paying now. And now we have more bills. I'm now married. That's another layer of complexity to it. And I have essentially a 9 to 5. It's a little different than that, but it's essentially that idea. In order to facilitate hobby time, I actually negotiated getting off early on Fridays. So I'm sacrificing some of my work out of the triangle to make more room for hobby time like this. Luckily, Friday is super dead and doesn't like contribute much in the way of getting me a bonus. So I'm not losing too much, but you know, there is a sacrifice being made there. And they're aware that
there is a decision to make.
Yeah, and you know, I did tell them like, no, it's a recording a podcast. I'm not just like getting off to go fuck off, you know. Like they're aware of why I'm leaving work, you know, why they're scheduling for me to leave work. It's not that I'm like, oh, I'm gonna dip out early. Is that cool? You know, it's they're aware.
Kevin
that
just leaves with a cheese
just
burrito.
Leaves,
at like 3.
fucking,
He's like, fuck it.
Peace,
I got a cheese burrito. I'm out.
Deuces, motherfucker. Early weekend. Fuck y'all.
Right? Like, no, I'm not. Like, I almost feel like
knocks
that guy
over
in
the water
office.
cooler.
Peace.
Fucking Jim's like, fucking Kevin. Every week that motherfucker leaves early on Friday.
Right.
Must be nice.
Must be nice.
Ginger motherfucker.
Right. But like that was something that I had to go into it knowing. Like I went into my job interview knowing that was going to probably be an issue because the drive from where I work to down here is significant and traffic on Friday night is brutal.
Yep.
Like, so, you know, went into my interview process. I was like, I understand like this is a request. I'm just asking for this, but I had to present it like I have kind of a second job in a way of recording this podcast. And it's, you know, this is the time it happens and this is what I would need to
Under the Hive of Madness, make sure you listen and sign up for our Patreon.
Yeah, to support my not being
to
at
support
work.
Kevin's second job.
Yeah, it's my second job. So, you know,
Kevin,
but
we
work
have to
was
pay you for you to call it a job.
I mean, but that's kind of the way you have to.
Mark, give him like an extra Twizzler or something tonight, man.
Yeah.
You can have a water, Kevin.
Yeah. Thanks, man. I'll use 2 squares of toilet paper next time.
Thanks, man.
2 squares.
Thanks.
2 whole squares.
Thanks for
instead of
holding
my
yourself
one.
back.
Yeah. At least I'm not Tom using up a whole roll.
He just uses the roll. He doesn't even use squares. He just grabs the roll and wipes his ass with it, and then throws it in the toilet. That's how Tom wipes. He just grabs a roll of toilet paper. He's like, yeah, that'll work.
But so you know that's one step that I've had to work into my balance mixture there. And I mean, it's not to complain about it, but you know that's one thing that you have to make a sacrifice somewhere. And then my significant other, my wife Summer, has been very gracious and understanding that it's a scheduled thing on Fridays, you know, and that's what it is. If I started showing up here 3 times a week, she would probably be mad. But, you know, rightfully so. It's not that I'm supposed to be spending that time with her, but it's that I am not doing, you know, if I'm coming down here 3 nights a week.
So you're not spending that time with her.
No, I'm not. I'm not able to then do all the other things that I need to do. Laundry, dishes, you know, getting the mail, like all the regular stuff that you have to do as an adult. You still have to get done. It's not like when you're a teenager working a fast food job, living in your mom's basement or whatever, like being able to just fuck off whenever you want and come home and oh, whatevs.
Yeah.
Like I remember when I was working at Pizza Hut and I didn't do laundry for a month.
Yeah.
Because fuck it. Well, I was in my work clothes.
I remember at one point I worked. Yeah.
That's the only thing I washed was my work clothes.
Yeah. Throw on that same pair of sweatpants with the Cheeto stain on it, and then you know, you just keep wearing those.
Man,
they're not dirty.
Well, I mean, I would wear
I only wear them at night.
I got it way worse.
Yeah.
I got it way worse. I was working at Hot Topic, and it would literally get to a point where like most of my clothes were dirty, and I would just buy new clothes at the end of my shift for the next day.
Because fuck it, right?
That's how you end up with too many fucking shirts, by the way.
Oh,
That's how you end up with like 90 shirts and 4 pairs of pants. You're like, what the fuck is wrong with me?
Well, I like still fit into clothes from super far long back, so it was like I had so many clothes I didn't need to do laundry very often. It was great.
I fluctuate like a fucking like a flounder, like a fucking what do you call those things?
Pufferfish.
A pufferfish, yeah, dude.
I was gonna let him go with flounder. I was like, I don't know what he's talking about. I'm going with flounder,
dude.
Now I know. What he's
my god.
about.
I mean, there's jeans that I have that were like,
but
so that's a weird part of hobby life balance, and we can all appreciate this, especially recently. Kevin and I definitely probably feeling the clinch more recently than Marky, but when one of the nice things is when you do have less responsibilities and you have more time to hobby, you have more time to hobby. One of the downsides of that is when you have less responsibilities and more time to hobby, you generally don't have hobby space.
Or
so
income.
going
Or money.
from
Yeah.
or money. Going from, here's my shoebox full of paints to, I can actually keep paints in one space is really nice. But one of the things that teaches you, some of our listeners I know are in college right now, is you come up with a lot of like quick, easy, space-saving mobile workstations. And honestly, even though I've got, as you can see behind me, I've got a drafting table, I've got 2 desks, I've got studio space that I could dedicate to painting. I don't, because I'm still a working artist. 1 and 2, I did a lot of it is podcast space. I still use a mobile painting station. It's gotten bigger. It's got more robust. It's gotten more complicated. But the idea of sitting next to my fiance on the couch, watching television with her and painting is much more interesting to me than like locking myself in my little room and being like,
Yeah.
although I do that in the basement. Where my airbrush station is, I go down to the airbrush station and I'm a little goblin.
Airbrush goblin.
She'll say something. She'll shout something from the top of the stairs, and I'll be like, and like crawl under the table.
Are you airbrushing again?
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about. The compressor's too loud.
Finding ways to combine things is definitely a good way to help expedite the balancing process. When I was building the knights for the wedding decorations, Summer and I built them. Each were building one right next to each other, so that way I could help her through the process because I had already built armatures. I kind of recognized, the bits and stuff. So she'd be like, "Wait,
right?
Which piece is this piece?" I'd be like, "Okay,
What's
so that's the inside joint
bit
for this arm," or something like that. Or, "Oh, wait, which way is up?" And I was working through my own at the same time. So I'd be like, "Oh, okay, so now we're taking these pieces and we're going to put them into these pieces." And it's kind of like a good thing to combine the two, spending time with her and hobbying at the same time.
And that's perfectly valid. Like, some people like to read a lot and some people don't like to read a lot. But you still want to be near, the person that you are choosing to spend the rest of your life with. So if they're going to read and you're going to paint, cool. Maybe you're going to read and they're going to paint. Maybe they watercolor paint. It's probably the best tip that Marky brought to the forefront is the communication side. Like you got to talk. You got to talk and figure it out.
Mine's been,
even if it's with your friends, like, don't look at this as just a significant other thing. Because one of the hardest things to do as an adult is get a D&D game, like a role-playing game to consistently run. Because it's all communication and planning. You have to schedule with everybody. It's like the podcast. We even screwed around a couple of times with like, let's record Wednesday night. Okay, that didn't really work. Let's record Saturday. No, that doesn't really work. We had to play around and find the balance, the best schedule to record.
Mm-hmm.
And it's still kind of hard to get going sometimes.
Sometimes, yeah. Like tonight we're missing Tom.
Yeah, son of a bitch.
And a couple of episodes ago, we're missing me.
Tom's out enjoying a Renaissance fair while we all work. No.
Yeah, I was saying it must be nice to dress up as a barbarian and fly remote control planes in whatever park he's hanging out in,
God damn, Kevin, don't pull your punch at all, brother.
Right. I gotta help set up for Ren Fair. Sure.
Yeah, right.
By setup, I mean I'm gonna fly my plane and Ren Fair.
Marky, you had brought up earlier, you kind of skirted around it, but you had brought up earlier the fact that like these models aren't going anywhere. You bought them, you've assembled them, they're in your collection, they're not going anywhere. And I think that's, so how did you phrase it to me? You asked a really well thought question. You said, "Hey, isn't it nice to not be in the rush anymore?" Without getting into a lot of detail, we were involved with leading up to try to record a crusade with some friends of ours. And there was a lot of pre-production that had gone into it. And I had to change the army that I was going to do 4 times?
Yeah.
And it was at a point where I couldn't even, I would get like 4 guys painted. And I'll fully admit, I do not paint the fastest. I'm an older player. I have a tendency to lean kind of towards the heavy metal side, even though I'm not a very good heavy metal painter. I have a tendency to treat it that way. I paint each individual. If there's 6 armor panels, I might paint all of them a slightly different shade of blue or something. That's just the style. It's how I was brought up in playing the game. And as much as I go the Blanchetsu style nowadays, I still start with that super heavy, complicated base. I paint independent armor panels. And that's, I guess, my fault. But at the same time, as your question pointed out,
it's also your hobby.
It's my hobby. Yeah, it's not my fault. That's the way that I want to paint. And that killed me, man. Switching 4 armies in like 3 weeks, fucking drove me nuts.
I think what Ryan's talking about is when I was talking to everybody, the way that the game is now is because the game is so popular and things are more on the competitive side. From what I've seen, from what I've talked to a lot of people about. I mean, when you met somebody, and this is all old head stuff, so sorry if you're a newer player. It was just things were a little different back then. Not that it was better or worse. It was just different.
It's different, yeah.
But, you know, back in the day when you met somebody and you played Warhammer, they were like Kevin. They were like, dude, lore.
I'm all about Warhammer.
Yeah,
Warhammer.
Like, oh yeah, this guy, this is fucking Sergeant Buck, and you know, this is my lore. This is the lore that I love. And they unload this stuff on you because they have no one else to unload this stuff on. There was, you know, the internet was not as, you know, the internet was obviously there. You didn't have anybody to talk to about something that you were super passionate about. So back then when you met somebody and you were passionate about it and you would talk to them about it, like there was days where I would play my buddy and we'd talk about lore and play games for like 16 hours straight, sleep for like 6 hours and then get back to it.
It's like our Vegas trips.
Exactly. Like I flew out to, I believe it was Tennessee to do that with my buddy that we used to play all the time. And nowadays, and because of that, because people you were playing with were so few and far between, you weren't rushing to get the next meta thing out there. And obviously the competitive scene was way less of a...
Slower.
Yeah, it was way slower. You know, the same army would be winning a tournament for like 2 years. I mean, I could be talking out of my ass right now, but that's kind of how I felt it was from what I heard. I wasn't a competitive player back then.
I would play a tournament. I mean, there would be a couple of there would be a tournament a year. A tournament was not a weekend event. A tournament was like in January until May. We're going to play a tournament. And you would coordinate, you would talk, you'd fucking figure out in the schedule. You weren't playing a game every other day. You were playing, you know,
or every couple hours,
3 games.
That
a
day, that might be three games a day, 4 days of playing in a 6-month period.
Yeah,
and like that was just it. That was how the tournament worked. That was it. I mean, that was how they were being organized. Anyway, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, no, you're good. Yeah, I mean, you weren't rushing to get things done. You were enjoying the painting side of it. You were enjoying the lore. You were kind of, slow burning the 40K candle. Now it's like, because GW just pushes shit out and just there's constant, changes to rules and lore and everything's just getting pumped out and like this unit's good now and you're like, oh, that's a badass looking unit, and then 3 months later there's another unit that's slightly better, and then your unit gets nerfed and you're like, oh, I'm gonna buy these now, and you're not even done painting the first ones that you bought and you're not getting to enjoy that. And so the speed of the hobby is now at a way different pace, and it's a little bit harder. The work-life hobby balance is a lot harder to maintain nowadays than it was back then when, you would get a codex every 3 years or some shit.
Yeah. 3rd edition crept into third and a half edition, and then a 4th edition rule book came out, but most of the armies still use 3rd edition codexes.
I think all the way up to 5th.
Yeah, this whole idea of, oh, it's 8th. Here's your 8th codex. Oh, now here's your Psychic Awakening. All of that's new, very new.
Yeah. And not that it's bad, and to a lot, it's just different.
Yeah. And to a lot of players, it's not new. And awesome. There is nothing cooler in a fandom, be it music, be it gaming, be it video games, be it anything.
Yeah, then seeing it
new
grow,
fans.
grow and have new fans and just new things that you're seeing, like being able to see something like a Stardy, like we didn't get, like there's so many things now, right?
You know how long I was waiting for
badass.
things like a Stardies to even be a thing?
Right. What we got was the first Dawn of War game. That was like the only.
That was the game changer.
Yeah,
and
it
lots
was like
of
a 15.
And I'm gonna say that was what brought Warhammer to the United States.
Right.
I think that was Americans' biggest exposure was Dawn of War, the franchise starting. Well, because that was our first RTS. Every other one had been turn-based at that point.
No. Dawn of, for Warhammer. I got you. I was
For
like,
Warhammer.
nah, dude, StarCraft.
No. For Warhammer.
I had been playing Warhammer tabletop for a while when Dawn of War came out, but I think you're right. Now that I think about it, Dawn of War and the beginning of the Horus Heresy Black Library was was the initial, like the floodgate kind of trickled over
to America.
The major change and like economically, like you can look at sales records and a bunch of other stuff and you can track it. The major explosion was COVID. COVID had a massive surge in Warhammer players because it's a hobby that you can spend a lot of time working on that can put you in a different headspace. Yeah. Painting miniatures
can go sit
can be
at
very
a table
zenny.
6 feet away from somebody.
Very much so.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot changed. From about Psychic Awakening on into 9th edition, there's been a lot of push and a lot of new model. And it's dope. It's so cool to have all these choices. And it's so awesome to see all these players. And it's so cool to get into all these different conversations. But it's also overwhelming. And it's overwhelming because 15 years ago, if you had asked me who's the most celebrity person that would ever play Warhammer 40K, I wouldn't tell you an actor. I mean, I would have assumed that actors played, but I would have also assumed an actor never would have said they played.
Yeah, I don't even know when Robin Williams was realized to play 40K. I think that was maybe
that was like a secret
8 years ago.
Yeah,
that people found out.
And it was like right after he died, probably.
Yeah. No, I think it was a little before.
I believe. Oh, maybe. So the first gaming group that I was part of, the Grey Knights, before that word carried the weight that it carries now, the Grey Knights existed as a faction or as a lore bit. You know, when we said it back then, we didn't mean the Space Marine faction because that wasn't really a thing yet. There was a handful of guys that played that were at like a whole other level. There was a dude who was a lawyer in San Bernardino Valley who had, and this was, I'm talking about like early 2000s, he had LEDs inside of his Land Raiders. He paid somebody who knew how to do it to install, like so there were people who had a lot of money that played the game. There were people who had a lot of influence that played the game. But like, I never would have been like, oh yeah, Ed Sheeran plays. Oh yeah, Henry Cavill plays. Oh yeah, Angel Mount. The kid with the cool name from the Kingsman. He plays.
Eggy?
Like yeah, whatever the actor's name, which I can't remember.
Know the actor's name.
Like, it's just one of those things where like, it's dope. It's fucking cool as shit. But 15 years ago, I never would have thought. I wouldn't have been like, oh yeah, well, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, I never would have been like, oh yeah, you know, Ed Harris plays.
Yeah. Yeah, they got like WWE wrestlers now that are like all in 40K, and
it's cool.
That one girl that dresses up as 40K.
Yep.
Yeah, it's super cool. Like, don't get me wrong, but it definitely put pressure, an overwhelming amount of pressure on kind of like the rush to get models painted and out on the table, which definitely burned me out about 6 months ago.
Yeah.
Really bad. And these guys saw it.
Yeah.
These guys saw me burn out pretty hard.
To get back on that, I mean, there's no reason to burn yourself out. I mean, I've burnt myself out, but there is no reason. Learn from my mistakes, you know? There's no reason to burn yourself out. The hobby is not going anywhere. These models will probably outlive all of us. Billy's still going to be around when Kevin's, fucking getting eaten by worms in the ground.
Ideally, I will give Billy to my children.
Exactly.
And Billy will continue to conquer post-reju.
Yes.
He just got another reju, but he's kicking ass.
Post-reju.
And I mean, I think about how, like, the feels good that gives you of, like, being able to pass down something that was so special to you to, like, your kids, if you ever plan on having kids, or maybe even passing it on to somebody else. And just knowing that, Billy's out there somewhere, giving some kid joy because you gave your army to some kid because you're like, I'm probably never going to play again. All my friends passed away or some shit. Like, or maybe you keep Billy.
Dude, I'm going to be.
It's like a starter Pokemon backstory.
Yeah, some shit. I don't know.
I'm going to be the old man in Ronin fucking painting miniatures. And that's something important. Painting miniatures, this hobby is not new. This hobby is very old. Pewter miniatures go back. Well, very old is probably not a good word for it, but pewter miniatures, metal miniatures, modern miniatures, the idea of modern miniatures definitely goes back to like pre-Civil War. And I'm sure there was something that existed before that these evolved out of. The idea of taking a little facsimile and painting it up, spending a lot of time on it is new. And when part of this is that the word game and the word hobby need to not be bad words. They need to not have a negative connotation. If you put a bunch of love and experience into the hobby of painting miniatures, you're creating a piece of art. And what Marky and Kevin are talking about, Billy, as silly as it is, and as much as we like kind of joke around and talk shit, good shit, but talk shit about Billy at the end of the day is a work of art. It's a collaborative work of art between Mark and Kevin. They've both put a lot of effort and a lot of energy into making that miniature a fucking showpiece. And that's okay. It's also okay to have a 2,000 point army painted in a week so you can go to a tournament. 100%. But if you're like me and it's going to take you 2 weeks to paint fucking 20 Gene Stealers, take 2 weeks to paint 20 Gene Stealers.
Yeah, I mean, it took me years to get a fully painted army. Like that's not, and that's a normal thing. Like that was not that was not an uncommon thing back in the day. Now it's a little uncommon.
now if it takes you more than between one tournament to get an army built and painted, you're slow.
Yeah, right.
I wonder how much of that is Games Workshop. So back in the day, there wasn't a point penalty for having a gray army. There were tournament organizers that were dicks who said you couldn't play. That's always existed. There are DMs who are dicks and say if your fucking D&D miniature is not painted, you can't play. That type of elitism has always existed. But when
I think the big thing that we're trying to convey is that try to enjoy, if you enjoy those aspects of the hobby, enjoy all aspects of the hobby. Don't force yourself to do something to try to enjoy one part of the hobby. Try to enjoy the entire experience. The hobby is an experience. It's a happy experience. It's not like you're playing a game and it's everything's going to get left behind. It's like these things will always be here. I mean, unless you're trying to play competitively or trying to chase a specific meta, then I mean, obviously that's what makes you happy. Then that's what makes you happy. But enjoy the painting side of the hobby. Enjoy the building side. Enjoy the creation. Enjoy the lore. And you can always enjoy the game. The game's always going to be here.
Or even if you don't.
Yeah, and I was going to say your hobby balance could be painting fast.
Or if your hobby is just playing the game, even if it's not meta, but it's just playing the game, right? There's nothing wrong with commission painting your army.
Oh no, not at all.
Because it's your hobby.
Exactly.
Who cares? Like, oh, you didn't paint them, but they look badass, so cool.
Yeah,
but they look, as long as you're happy with it at the end of the day, that's on you.
It's your hobby. Don't let anybody tell you how to enjoy your hobby.
Yeah. And as much as we're all I guess we're all kind of identifying we're slow painters. As much as we're all slow painters, that doesn't mean that everybody's slow painters. That doesn't mean that we're the normal. There are people who can bust out amazing paint jobs with an airbrush in a 3-week period. And honestly, fucking amazing. I love that shit. I think it's cool. I think it's dope. I wish it was a skill that I had because it looks really good. But it's also not necessarily where I enjoy painting.
Mm-hmm.
And
I mean, like,
you know,
I was able to build and paint a Baneblade in 48 hours.
Yeah, it's because you're crazy.
But also, I had a drive, and because we had a game coming up, and I wanted to surprise everybody with it.
Yeah.
So I was doing it on my own. It wasn't like, oh,
And
I'm going to get a Baneblade and paint it in 48 hours just to see if I can. It was, you know what? We've got a game coming up, and how funny would it be if I showed up with a Baneblade?
It'd be
and
hilarious.
that
But
touches
I've got
on
the money, so I might as well. And then I did it, and it was fucking hilarious.
that touches on that discipline stuff that Mark was talking about. So
Yeah.
there is a discipline to painting and there's a ritual to painting, and it can get really easy. And I'll fully admit this, it can get really easy to be so out of painting that you just don't even want to try. And
That's currently me, but that's
Yeah.
also because I'm going to have to strip down some nights before I can repaint them. I'm like, oh, well, that's a process.
It turns into a huge job and you start looking at it with like this,
that, and we're still trying to put away wedding decorations.
right.
Because I don't yet have a full hobby space. I now have at least it's not in a tub under the bed. Now it's a shelf in a like closet.
Yeah, I had my stuff.
But it's only graduated so far. It hasn't.
Yeah, the hobby's really grown for me once I definitely had my own space. But
Hobby
before
space.
that, it was like my stuff was in my garage in a big tub, all thrown together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, if that's how you're keeping your stuff right now, cool. That's how we all kept our stuff forever. And it's a matter of using what you have. Like back in the day, my the joke was like that I showed up with my Imperial Guard army packaged in food containers because I had red vines tubs, and I would just take my guardsmen and just put them in the bucket.
I like how he starts off with like back in the day, and I'm like, okay, so 1994, all of my stuff was in food containers. I'm like, Kevin, that was like right before I moved to Iowa.
Yeah, but that's because that's what I had. I used vegetable containers that you get from Costco.
Yeah,
when you're like, oh, can I get some boxes to take that? And they give you the giant.
Yeah, I mean, my brother still stores his stuff in like his Jordan shoe boxes.
Yeah, I have. You can take 2 basilisks and put them nose to nose, and it fits in a Vans shoebox.
Oh, there you go.
Because the Vans are kind of skinnier.
Yeah.
But that's about the width of a basilisk, so I can put 2 basilisks in each shoebox.
Yeah, I mean, I still have some of my stuff. I have like my 3 Land Raiders, 2 Predators. I have that in a Tupperware tub.
Yeah.
Yep. I am just starting to figure out and decide, and you know, for whatever this is worth, I'm 39 years old. I am just starting to find the things that stack well and store stuff the way I like for my hobby.
Mm-hmm. Like in a order that is convenient.
And it's that fucking Netflix show's fault. Is it the container girls?
Does this bring
organizing girls? No. The 2 girls from Orange County that organize people's lives.
Oh, the
organizing show.
It's all they do is go around and organize for people.
Yeah, it's their fault. It's products that they talked about that I was like, oh, try it. Fine, I'll try it. And then I tried it, and I'm like, oh, they've got a point.
I'm like, oh, that works pretty good.
This is some good shit. Almost at the beginning of the episode in Patreon, and we stopped it because it had to do with the hobby. I have been using like tackle boxes and like secondhand bought stuff to store bits for years. And I went from that to these HDX Home Depot boxes that I really loved. And then they discontinued the HDX Home Depot boxes.
Of course they did.
Yeah.
However, my bits collection is outgrowing those boxes. So now I'm looking at, I found another solution, and I just bought a giant fucking tub of bits, and I'm investing in bits solutions. So I'll try to post up some pictures of what I'm using.
Yeah. I think the wifey just bought me some like Hobby Lobby like containers.
Organizer trays.
Yeah, organizer trays.
Nice.
Dude, that's where I throw all my bits.
There's these things called I think they're called like really easy boxes or stupid easy boxes or something. Really useful box.
I think I was like, it's a really, it starts with really.
Yeah, it's really useful box. Ninjon suggested it, and these container girls suggested it like maybe a week later. So I watched his painting video and I'm like, oh, those look neat. And then my fiance watches the organizing show, which I can't remember the fucking name of. And they talked about him and I'm like, And then I bought them. And I was like, holy shit, this is like the best thing ever. None of this stuff, I mean, we don't have a solution to it. And there's definitely
making it work.
Yeah. And there's definitely, it's really gratifying as a painter and as a player to play a game against somebody whose army is fully painted and to see all of that happening. It's a very nice like achievement. However, I have so much fun playing the game that if somebody shows up with gray army, cool. You know, if you show up with a gray army, if you show up with gray Space Marines for a year and then you show up with gray
something else
for a year, and then you show up with, and then you come back with, and then your Space Marines come back into focus and you show up with your same gray Space Marines and it's like year 3 or 4, I might start to be like, hey, you should prime those.
At least prime them so I know what chapter they are.
Well, I mean, it kind of goes back to the unsaid rule that Tom and I had, where if whatever you plan on putting on the table, you will paint. I mean, eventually when you get to that point where you have a 2,000 point army and now you're like, okay, well now I'm going to start dabbling in some other stuff. Now I got some intercessors. Now I got some eradicators, prime them, base them, get their base colors on, and then put them. And then that gives you an excuse to at least get it started. So you can put them on the table and you can be like, hey, I at least have them, and
it's part of
table
that
ready.
And it's part of that ritual of discipline and that ritual. If you spend 2 hours a week painting, if you just say, I'm going to dedicate 2 hours a week to painting, you'll get a lot done. The other thing to keep in mind with the hobby is, and this is, I think, just an overall art tip. Let's all give a tip or two as we wrap up here. An art tip, a writing tip, an anything tip is you have to get the bad stuff out. You can't, when you sit down to write your first piece of lore, your first short story, when you sit down to sketch your first sketch, when you sit down to paint your first model, it's not going to be good. And that's okay. That's needed. You've got to experiment. And that's really what you're doing. You're experimenting, you're throwing things down, you're trying to push your limits, you're trying to push the hobby, you're trying to figure out where you can go with it. You got to do that. Everyone has to do that. You've got to crawl before you can walk. You got to walk before you can run. So don't feel like you have to be a golden demon winner right out the gate because the books are full of golden demon winning paint jobs.
Be realistic.
Games Workshop has pro painters that work for the company.
Yeah,
it's cool.
Don't compare yourself to others. Be realistic and take your first steps.
You think the Sistine Chapel was painted by a scrub? No, it was painted by a fucking masterpiece.
Do you think Rome was burned in a day? Just say.
I don't know. I feel like it burned for 3 or 4 at least.
It's always my favorite. Like Rome wasn't burnt in a day.
Yeah.
I think my second tip would be anything you do, be it writing, be it painting, be it exercising, be it reading, anything you do takes intent and ritual. And it probably sounds a little weird, but other people call it discipline. Other people call it schedule, whatever you want, but you're performing
witchy explanation.
Yeah, I know. It's my witchy bullshit. You're performing a ritual. You're going through a set of circumstances in order to better yourself. And you're not going to be able to, well, if you're young enough, I guess you might be able to, but you're not going to be able to do 250 push-ups in under 5 minutes on Tuesday because you decide, I've never done a push-up before in my life. I'm just going to do it. But if you spend time investing in doing push-ups, you can get there. You're not going to be able to paint an entire 2,000 point army in a year unless you start trying to paint a 2,000 point army in a year.
Yeah, and, I went from having never painted a Warhammer model, and like the only experience I had like model painting was old planes that I had painted when I was a kid. But that was from the little glass testers paint. like jars, like the really old
oil paint. Oh
yeah, it was oil paints, and like I didn't know about thinning paints or any of that, so they came out looking terrible. Like that meme that goes around with the super bad painted Space Marine with his face looking all deformed and all
Do you still
super
love me, brother?
Do you still love me, brother? Yeah, that one. Like that's how all of my paints looked. I mean, but that was when I was a kid, and then because of that, it turned me off of painting forever. And that's actually one of the other reasons I never got started on Warhammer. I was like, man, I paint like a fucking amateur. Like that, it's going to look terrible. And
but if you don't paint past the terrible, you're not going to get to good.
Exactly.
And you're probably, and this is just as a working professional art, well, not that I do it anymore. Now I'm an engineer, but as somebody who has and who periodically works as a professional artist, I hate most of my own work. And you guys like it. You guys like my logos. You know, not only
it's
the people in the cast,
problems.
Right.
Like I know which specific guardsman that I don't like because I fucked up a paint job. I'm like, nah, his fucking belt bleeds onto his pants too much.
And we probably don't note it. We've probably never pointed it out.
I have so many guardsmen you're never going to get. Like you could grab a handful of them and be like, which one is it?
Yeah. Oh, I could find it.
But yeah, I mean, eventually. But, and yeah, all it took was for me to finally commit to doing it.
Yeah.
To commit to painting. And I surprised myself with how good my first like batch of guardsmen came out.
Dude,
and my first Lehman Russ with the camo and everything on those Chimera, that first Chimera came out so well purely because I actually just sat down and dedicated my time to it. I got in the mood. I was like, I'm going to paint these guys. I grew up near the military base. I had a mental picture of kind of what it wanted to look like. I put on a movie to inspire me. I was watching Starship Troopers. I got super into it. And I like just went at it full force and I dedicated my time to it. So it's like, I guess that's my thing is just don't half-ass it. Like if you're going to commit to the hobby, commit to the hobby. And you can, like we said, you can blend it with other things, but don't compromise the hobby by being like, oh, I'm going to be, on a road trip, I'll paint in the car. Like that's not the right way to try to maximize your hobby time. I mean, good on you if you can paint in the car, cool. But you're not going to be in the right environment to completely dedicate to that.
Or headspace.
Yeah, the headspace. You'll be distracted. So
that's a good point. I think your second tip there that you may not have even realized was prepare your environment. You put on a movie.
Yeah, I put on a movie, whatever like that. And then put on a movie, put on a lore video, whatever it happens to be that you want to do.
Listen to our podcast.
Imagine that. There's a
podcast.
This is
episode like 56 or 57. That's a lot of hours of podcast to paint to.
I could probably paint 300 conscripts before running out of podcast.
Yeah, Seal, listen to the fucking podcast.
Yeah,
Seal. Hey, she's listening to a bunch of lore books. I can't fault her for listening to lore.
Oh, yeah.
Considering we're a lore podcast.
I guess that's my other one is like, I haven't been super building or painting, but I have been reading books again.
Oh yeah, I'm in a pretty big. So, well, I'm listening to them, but I'm in a pretty big.
Immersing myself in the world is still contributing to my hobby time, in a way. It's not exactly, but it still keeps the juices moving, and it reminds me of like, oh yeah, I think I like that little concept that I use in this book, and I'll put that into my lore for my army or something. Mm-hmm. There's always little other things you can do that can feed towards your hobby that aren't direct the hobby.
Yeah, we're talking about the tactile experience of the hobby right now, the modeling and the painting. But we're a lore podcast and we're a creative writing podcast. So creative writing, it's a huge part of the hobby, especially for us, especially for our focus.
And that's it. You're on a road trip. That probably would be a good time to like write while you're in the car, or brainstorm or whatever. Yeah. Listen to other things and get some new ideas. Write things down. That is a good way to do it. Just make sure you're in the right place for what you're trying to achieve, I guess would be the way to go about it.
What about you, Mark?
Yeah, my tip I don't want to say for the people that know me, but because I mean not everybody, I'm not a very open person, but I'm a little bit of a pessimist. I see a lot of the bad, so I try to force myself to have people look at things in a positive way, because my negativity is not a great thing and I don't like it. So I try
I'm good
to,
at that.
yeah, Kevin's a very positive. I try to surround myself by positive people. And I try not to bring people down. I bring myself down, but I try not to bring other people down. But my point is, remember why you get into the hobby, and what a hobby is. A hobby is something to enjoy. A hobby is something to experience, and you want that to be a positive and happy experience.
Yeah.
And with everything that goes on, and not to get all what is it, sappy. Yeah, that's the word I'm looking for. Sappy. Thank you, Kevin. It's my Kevin's dictionary over here that helps me out with my words, and Ryan as well. Not to get too sappy, but with everything that goes on in the world and all the negativity that goes around and the negative people in this world, and you're trying to look for escape when you play games, when you read books, when you surround yourself with friends and positive people, you're trying to enjoy and gain that positive thing in your life, because come Monday you got to go back to work and that shit sucks. So enjoy the hobby. I can't say don't rush it, because that's not, if you maybe you enjoy it, don't force it. Maybe, I guess it'd probably be the better way of it, of
don't
saying
go
it.
outside of your confines. If you're a slow painter, don't feel like you have to be a fast painter. If you're a fast painter, don't feel like you need to be a slow painter. I mean,
don't feel like, I should slow down and take more time. If you paint fast, then you paint fast. That's what it is.
I mean, unless that's what you're striving for, right?
Right. Set your own goals.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So remember why you started the hobby. Remember to enjoy it. That is probably the biggest thing I can say for people getting into the hobby, or that are in the hobby and maybe they're struggling a little bit. Just remember why you got into it in the first place.
Maybe to feed a little bit off that, it's okay to take a break.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
That's 100%. I guess that's one thing that we didn't like. You hinted on, like the models will always be there. The game should be there for a long time.
Right.
But we never outright said it. Like, if you need to take a break, put your models away and don't play or think
don't
about
look
it
at
for
them.
a while.
Yeah.
Go ahead. The game will be here. The community will be here, and nobody's gonna fault you for being like, I just didn't have the time for it for a while.
No, not at all.
I stayed relatively heavy into the lore. In fact, in the writing side of the lore, but I stopped playing in 5th edition. Mark, you stopped playing 6th edition, didn't pick back up until 8th?
Yeah,
right?
I didn't. I stopped playing. I played every edition, but I took big breaks between editions. Yeah,
essentially,
and
I was on a break my entire life until 8th edition. I was all about lore and never was on the game side of it.
Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that at all.
Yeah.
It's just how you enjoy the storytelling, it's how you enjoy the part of the game that you're into. If you're into the storytelling side, enjoy the storytelling side. I think, to wrap it up, guys, if you don't mind, one of the reasons that we started the painting contest, and one of the reasons that we got into it, one is it's fun. All of the Great British Bake Off, Ink Master, Is It Cake? Pick one of those shows. They're fun. It's reality TV. I get it. It's, some people make fun of it for being stupid or whatever, but honestly, that shit, it's fun. It's fun to see people
forged in fire.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Expressing themselves through the thing they're passionate about and competing. And competition is okay. The reason that we started the painting contest is we wanted to play around with the idea of challenging people, challenging ourselves, challenging everybody in the community, but also it's a soft deadline, and soft deadlines are important. A hard deadline, and to define really quickly, a hard deadline is have 2,000 points painted by the tournament, which starts June 1st. It's May. By the time you guys hear this, it's going to be May somethingeth. It's going to be what? May 9th is when the episode drops. Whatever. What is Wednesday? Somebody told me. Rescue me. I'm floundering.
11.
So May 11th. So by the time you guys hear this episode, it'll be May 11th. That's a fucking hard deadline. You have 3 months to paint a model for a contest where you could win a cool little silly trophy that we made up. That's a soft deadline. And it's it take 3 months. Enjoy it. But it also serves a purpose. It serves a function. And the reason that we change the theme all the time is, you can keep, as a painter, at least for me, and obviously for other painters, because Ninjon did an episode about this at one point in his career. Marky, I know you've mentioned this as well. At a certain point in your painting hobby, you're going to hit a point where you're just like, well, shit. I am so done painting Space Marines or orcs. I need something different. And that's why our challenge changes. If you want to use our challenge, and we've been pretty open with everybody in our community, if you want to use our challenge to meet whatever deadline that you have for yourself, we're totally cool with it. You want to make sure that you're painting nothing but your Space Marine army throughout everything, and you want to use our challenges to do it, fine. However, if you need that break, we're going to do a fantasy challenge. We're going to do a hero challenge. We're going to do a orcs only challenge. We're going to do these things that are specifically designed to break your mind out of whatever, rut you're in, to experiment and play differently. And when we come back and judge it, we're going to judge it in two different ways. And those of you who have already listened to us or have already seen the episodes, you'll totally understand. Those of you who compete in the contest will understand. Marky and I have a tendency to very much judge a little bit more on a technical basis. And Tom and Kevin have a more like artistry. It's the only way I can kind of think of it. It's more like a gut artistry feel way of judging. And it's not because we're trying to tell you guys how to paint. We're giving you that flavor. We're giving you that mixed critique of how it actually works. Sometimes a model is going to stand out and it's going to be my favorite. And I'm speaking for myself now. It's going to be my favorite, and I might not give it my top vote because I don't think it's not hitting whatever technical thing I'm looking for. That doesn't mean I don't
set forth to judge
fucking love it. That's just, and again, we're not, the reason that we designed it and the reason that we do it the way that we do it is to kind of set these like soft expectations and these soft deadlines, because we want to encourage, we want to see growth. And I fucking love seeing the same group of painters come back each time. You guys blow me away. Like the advances you guys make on your own work,
it's so
inspires the shit out of me. It's dope.
I show it to my
gnarly.
coworkers. That's actually one of my favorite things is going to work and being like, so you know that painting contest, right? And my coworker's like, yeah. I'm like, check out this new one. And he'd be like, you paint that? I'm like, nah, man. This is just one of the people that listens to my podcast.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, I think, obviously this is the hobby is very important, and we spend a lot of time talking about the creative writing side. We do try to come back to hobby stuff every once in a while. It's very, very important, and this stuff is important to mental health. I guess that's probably the thing that we've unspokenly said the entire time. Hobbies and games and storytelling are all about mental health. You're trying to zen yourself out. You're trying to recenter yourself. You're trying to get into a positive headspace. When you get burnt out, when you hate everything you're doing, when the hobby isn't working for you, it can be very bad. It can be a very, very burnt out, nasty place. And that's where I was when we started kicking around the concept of doing this episode. And it was, I said his name like 4 times this episode, not intentionally, but it was Ninjon who suggested something. And then these guys who encouraged me to actually do that broke my rut. And it's the whole reason that I started painting fantasy stuff again. And it's not that I'm playing Age of Sigmar or fantasy, because I'm not, but it's just different. It's different from painting Tyranids. It's different from painting 2,000 points of Tyranids. It's different from painting 2,000 points of Eldar. I painted fucking 3 trolls. It was a blast. It was so much fun. And honestly, it inspired me to do a bunch of crazy shit with my 40K painting. And it's so dumb because I didn't move away from the hobby. Like, I didn't do something completely different. It was such a small change, but it was so mentally relaxing, and it centered me back to where I needed to be with the hobby. So thank you guys, by the way,
good,
for
man.
Encouraging me to actually do that and not kill myself.
Yeah, I'm currently on a hobby break. We're wrapping the podcast up, obviously, but don't be afraid to delve into your other hobbies. I didn't talk about it much. I probably should have, but I cycle between different hobbies, whether it's paintball or video games or 40K or board games.
Seasonal hobbies are definitely a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Tom and I have both been, one of our other hobbies is working at the Renaissance fairs.
Yep.
And we've been busy with that.
Yep.
And and it takes time and effort. And obviously I would love to play more Warhammer, but I'm busy doing something else that I also enjoy doing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, then it changes. for a while, I was an avid snowboarder, so all of my free time was spent doing that hobby instead. You know, it's just a matter
of balancing it with Warhammer. I remember
Well,
when
no.
he'd be like, "Oh, I'm going snowboarding tomorrow. We got to wrap up early." I'd be like, "We're not going to wrap up early." Sorry, Kevin.
Or it would be like, I was snowboarding yesterday, but let me drink these 3 Red Bulls and I can be
Dude,
there.
the first time I ever snowboarded, the road trip back, finish up the pod with the story. It felt when I got out of the car, it felt like I had been fucked in the ass by 30 horses.
It felt like you got hit by the car. Right?
It felt like I got fucked by the car.
You must have fallen over a lot.
Oh, I did. It was so painful. I've never been in so much pain.
the way it's totally not related to the podcast at all, but the way I always described like eating it on a snowboard, you're getting in a car crash every time you eat it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
That's the amount of force that's being put on your body. You're going 30 miles an hour to 0 miles an hour like that.
Well, in my case, it was 2 miles an hour to 0 miles an hour.
But even then, you're still falling 5 feet to the ground.
Yeah.
And generally, when you're a newbie, it's because you caught an edge and it whips you to the ground.
Yeah, 100%.
Hurls you into the ground.
Yeah,
with
I ate it
vengeance.
pretty hard.
Like I had a concussion on the slope
going
at
on
least
there.
once. You catch the edge and it throws you into the ground. I've hit over 60 miles an hour on a
Oh
snowboard.
my god,
It's super fun,
no,
but it's
thank you.
also terrifying.
Oh, thank you.
when I used to ski, and I
Downhill
never
ski, you can top
never
out super
snowboarded.
fast.
Yeah, I never snowboarded, but I used to downhill ski, and I used to do double black diamonds a lot.
Oh yeah,
and
yeah.
cliff jumps. And you hit a 60-foot cliff jump in a powder. It's exhilarating and fun as fuck. But I'll tell you right now,
It's also
I
butthole
know.
clenching.
I know that my legs and knees can't handle it anymore. I just know.
My knees are toasted. I don't think I could land one of the fat like giant jumps anymore.
God.
Like my knees would give out. I could do a quarter pipe. I can throw a quarter pipe, definitely do small rails, but there's no way I'm going to do a 25-foot jump or anything.
Yeah, I mean, I don't snowboard, and I know my knees can't handle
Right.
it.
But and even all this conversation, this is realistic expectations, which you then can fold back into the hobby talk of.
Yeah.
Do you know that you're an adult and you have to work? So don't play a game of Warhammer on a Monday night because it's going to mess up your work day tomorrow. That's a realistic expectation. But when the weekend comes around, that's when you plan to game.
Yeah. Don't paint until 4:00 in the morning if you know you have class the next day.
Don't tell me what to do.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, sorry.
You were just talking. Like these are time management suggestions. We're not telling you what to do. These are time management suggestions. But at the same time, like it's your hobby, it's your game, it's what you want to do. We want to enjoy it with you. We want to continue being involved. Obviously, we're going to continue being involved as you guys listen to us. But we're giving you our insights, and we might not have it figured out. Perfectly honestly, the very first time I painted in a group with you guys, Marky and I are sitting down at the studio, and Marky's watching me paint, and he looks at it, he's like, "You paint every panel, don't you?" And I'm like, "Yep." And he's like, "Fuck, man." Do you remember that?
Now, when you say every panel, what do you mean? Because like when I picked up my Lehman Russ to paint it for the first time, I basically just dipped the fattest brush I had in green and then just went.
Marky, tell him what.
I dipped it in tan, and I was like.
Marky, tell him what it means.
I was like, cool, we're done.
So you know how, like, let's just throw out an example. You know how Space Marines have pauldrons, right?
Yeah.
You know how there's the inside of the pauldron, like underneath the arm? Like, you have to flip the model upside down, and then there's the inside of the pauldron.
Bad.
There's
little gaps, the little...
No, on the inside. So there's a pauldron, right? And it goes over your shoulder, and then there's that little, like, corner that sticks out, and, like, you can...
Yeah.
Like, in the armpit.
Yeah.
Yeah, in there.
I mean, me too.
No. I don't think you understand what I'm talking about.
It's just really tiny, so there's no detail. But I do take the paintbrush and like rub it up the crotch of the guardsman, the armpit of the guardsman, between the backpack and the bum roll, and like
I'm talking about the parts that like. I'm talking about painted well in the parts that nobody will ever know.
Marky was like, "Why are you?"
Before gluing it on.
He was like, "Why the fuck are you painting the bolts on the inside of this dude's arm?" And I'm like, "'Cause they're there." He's like, no one's gonna see it. I'm like, I know it.
This
I know
is like,
it's there.
I'm gonna paint the inside of my chimera, and then I'm gonna glue the door shut.
Almost, yeah.
It's like that.
Yeah.
I feel attacked.
Hey, Valkyries have a super dope interior, and it would actually be really cool to paint one. However, you're never gonna see it, considering the fact that the door is like an inch wide.
Yeah. There's a reason why I paint my my windshields and stuff.
Yeah, that's fair.
I actually really like the way you paint windshields. In fact, that's the way I'm planning on going forward.
I really like it.
Like, I'm gonna paint the inside because I'm gonna leave it so that you can pull the windshield up and down. But I'm gonna paint my windshields that way because that looks dope as fuck.
I haven't decided how I'm gonna go for my windshields, but I like what I've been doing so far, like with my Taurox Prime with the green highlight.
Yeah,
I throw yellow behind it, and then I do the green Tesseract glow.
Yeah.
It's like the green light blowing out through the window.
Those Tauroxes you painted look so fucking badass, by the way.
Yeah. I mean, you printed them well, but the paint job on them actually, I really
paint job made them pop, dude. Yeah. Paint job made them pop. All right, guys. Well, yeah, reach out to us. Let us know what your balance is for your hobby life. Let us know tips that we missed, and share your tips with us. Mm-hmm. Obviously, we all walk down the path of life differently. Like, I don't. That's the way to say that, right? It sounded good.
Philosophical.
Speaking of the hobby, are you writing lore? We would like your lore. Send it to us. We have a segment that we do pretty much monthly called Tales from the Hive. We bounce back and forth between sharing our homebrew lore and from reading your guys' homebrew lore. We love it. We want to see more of those stories. We're opening up the Ordo Obscurus. So if you guys are interested in getting into just writing some creepy short stories, you can reach out to us through Discord or through our emails and get us that information. Speaking of creepy experiences, creepy stories, and Loris Obscurus. Loris Obscurus is another show we do about once a month. They're offset by a month, I think is the better way to say it. It's not that we do them once a month. They're about offset by a month, our Tales and our Loris Obscurus episodes. But our Loris Obscurus episodes, we look into stuff in the creepy paranormal world in real life, and we relate it back to Warhammer 40K, specifically from a storytelling perspective. But one of the things that we always find super fun is when people share. We love sharing our own ghost stories, but we also love sharing your ghost stories. So let us know about your ghostly. Yeah, let us know about your spooky experiences. Let us know about your cryptid experiences. Get that stuff emailed over to us at underthehivofmadness@gmail.com or grimdarkgaming@gmail.com. You can also reach out to us, as I mentioned earlier, through our Discord. We've got a lot of different channels to talk about lore. We got channels to talk about hobbying. We got channels to talk about hobby tutorials, hobby tips. We have video game channels. So if your hobby is in playing some video games, or you want to get in the hobby of video game playing with us, there's an opportunity there. There's all sorts of stuff. We've even got other hobby channels in there. Quite a few of us play role-playing games. There's a role-playing game section of the server. Some of us enjoy different types of board games, different types of card games. We've got that stuff down there too. So please come on out and join us there. We also have a website that is getting up and running. We are working in some galleries and some other ways to track what we are doing as far as like scheduling podcast episodes, different ways to get in contact with us and all of that. As always, I leave all of the links, all of the spellings, and all the direct ways to get to us in the show notes. If you're interested in getting a little bit more involved, you want to be involved in that painting contest we talked about earlier, you want to be involved in some of the other stuff that we do, including developing the role-playing game or seeing some of the development stuff that we release, you can follow us on Patreon, or you can join us on Patreon, patreon.com/underthehivofmadness. Please, please, please go and check that out. We've got some cool stuff there, including some artwork that only patrons have access to, as well as you've got to be a member of our Patreon to be involved in our painting contest. So definitely check that out. There's also a video component to this podcast, so you can not only hear our lovely voices, but you can see our lovely faces. We also do a little bit of extra content, probably about 30 minutes, sometimes 40 minutes, sometimes a little bit longer, of Patreon only content there. So if you guys want to keep abreast of the hobby progress we're making, or some of the changes, some of the ideas that we were rolling around and doing in the podcast, that is a great way to get that insight. Anything else, guys? Did I leave anything out?
No,
I think we're good. We talked it out pretty good here.
Well, that has been just about the damned hottest of hot sauce I have ever put down my gullet. I will tell you what, though, that Sump crust, it's pretty tasty. Beast talks about it all the time, but I never imagined that I would be enjoying some Sump crust bread here at Joe's Sump Shack. What do you give this Sump crust, Mark?
Sump crust, 5 toilets.
Right, man, that's some sour Sump crust.
Just
And
gotta
if,
get
helps that-
grind on it today.
With the hot sauce, 5 toilets full of shit.
And what happens when you dip it in that jambalaya?
Yeah, you got to get that Sump crust. You got to dip it in that gumbo. That's what Marky was doing wrong with his lemons earlier.
See, it soaks up some of that spicy lemon.
Until next time, we have been 665.66 UHMR Camrat Radio. Remember, you can catch us plying the Vox waves. Same Vox frequency, same ready time. And remember what the four-armed rats say. If you step on a crack, you might invite the four-armed emperor attack. I was waiting for Kevin to get mad at you for not reading any books.